welcome into the mock draft episode, or first mock draft episode of the summer, actually, for the Fantasy 4-pack. We're excited to go through this. It's right on the cusp of when you really typically want to start mock draft season. But it's important to start early, I think, with something like this because you gain some valuable data seeing how players move when you start mock drafting, late June, early July, all the way up into when your draft is in late August. Yeah. So I'm excited to get this series going. This is going to be a reoccurring segment that we'll bring to you all. Probably doing about a mock draft a week or so, leading up to draft season.
Maybe a couple extra right before those last few weeks of draft. Just
we'll
play it by ear.
Yeah, see how it's feeling. See how much the data's changing from draft to draft. Anything you guys want to touch on before we get started? Any news?
No. I mean, you bought the beer for this week, but I'll say the other reason that it's good to do mock drafts this early, even this early, is you get used to that feeling of the panic of when a pick goes. You're planning on taking a guy, doesn't go, and you're searching through. You kind of get used to that feeling of that mid draft.
Yeah, you get used to who's going around you.
Yeah.
Also, and speaking of the beer, this week we are drinking Laser Kitten with these very fine cans.
It's not that bad.
IPA made by Medusa Brewing. I'm a fan.
It's an IPA, but I'm still a fan. I could drink that.
Yeah, it's crisp. It's drinkable.
Yeah.
One other thing I did want to touch on, just because I think it's high time that we bring this in. I think I wanted to propose that we start our jersey bets with the mock drafts we're doing up until the start of the season. For the viewers watching at home, obviously we haven't ever brought these up on stream before, but jersey bets have been something that we've been doing as a fantasy league for probably half a decade now.
Yeah.
Whenever someone has a line in the sand take on a player or sporting event that they want to sort of try and get a jersey off of. If someone will take them up on the bet, I think the last one that I participated in was when you got your Josh Gordon jersey off of me. It was.
Thank you, Doug Fister.
Yeah, it was a baseball related bet that I'm still just annoyed about. Just Doug Fister should not have been able to do that well. But I think my idea for this is. We just do it based off of overall ranking at the end of the mock draft season. So we track who the winner is every mock draft. Person with the most wins. The two losers go ahead and buy them a jersey. You guys down?
Sounds fair to me.
Okay. I know if I take the mock draft crown, you guys are gonna be getting me a shiny new Chris Godwin jersey because I still need one of those.
Don't worry, I still have time to think about what you guys will be getting me. Maybe Joe Mixon, like the kid, or I can get.
Oh, your first overall pick from.
Are you sure you don't want Kerryon Johnson?
When he goes to a new team and he's allowed to flourish, maybe.
Well, I mean, I think you guys knew who you're getting me if you get one because I already have an
Jerry Jones.
No, I already have
Carson Wentz.
I already have an Aaron Jones jersey, so it's going to be an AJ Brown jersey and that nice Titans blue.
All right, well. Enough BSing. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of this episode. We're doing full point PPR, no kicker because kickers are bullshit. And we are doing draft spots this time based on our actual draft spots in our main fantasy league. So I'm drafting from the 2 spot, you're drafting from the 6, and Frankie is drafting from the 8. 12-man draft. So
we good to go?
I'm ready if you guys are.
Let's roll it.
All right.
I wonder who pick 1 will be.
So it looks like Christian McCaffrey is predictably off the clock. Or off the board.
The draft will start in 20 seconds.
Yeah, but I mean, with this one, this is kind of a reason I wanted to get in these higher picks. It didn't fall my way, so I just took 6. Normally I don't like being in the center, but just trying to lock down some elite player, I feel I'm comfortable then waiting and hoping that somebody slips down the board to me in the second round, whereas the first round's a lot more, you look at a fantasy article once, you can figure out who you're taking in the first round.
Well, and I don't disagree with that. I personally like picking from the turns, either from the 1 turn or the 12 turn, or as close to as I can, because I think it gives you a large advantage over the rest of the league who has to wait on their picks, and sure you're getting them more often, but you can't make any any real like master strokes with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I specifically in our draft pick contest this year, I ended up coming in second place. I got the second overall pick. Usually I don't end up drafting this high. I'm typically a late draft guy. I'm going high this year because I think this is one of the best years in recent memory to have a top 5 draft pick, because the drop off from guys like Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley to guys like Joe Mixon and Aaron Jones and Nick Chubb, I think is pretty significant.
Yeah. And
there's still a lot of really good players at the 24-25 turn. When you're going around into the second, end of the second, beginning of the third. So I feel you don't really have a lot of downside, and you get to lock in one of those truly elite superstar players. I'm going to go ahead and lock in Saquon Barkley. I think he's a no-brainer pick at 2, with the exception of if Christian McCaffrey's there.
All right. So this is something I regularly hope for, and it happened when we just tested to make this run through, and this is a guy I'm hoping for to be there at my 6th pick. It's going to be Alvin Kamara. I can say right off the top, there's not much thought here. I'm definitely not going with Devontae or Derrick Henry. I think Alvin Kamara is just on a more explosive offense, a lot more chance to climb up the board and potentially finish as the number 1 running back. And he just gives me that security of being the number 1 guy there in a just dynamite offense. So like I said, I'm not going to waste too much time here. I'm just going to keep us rolling and take Kamara.
I'd agree with that too, because the big thing that Kamara offers that those other two don't is obviously Devontae Adams doesn't run the ball, so you're not getting any rushing upside with him, and Derrick Henry doesn't catch passes, so it's like Kamara I think presents less rushing upside than Derrick Henry, but he more than makes up for it with his passing upside.
Yeah.
Who are you looking at, Frankie?
I said I was going to do it this year, so I'm going to kind of keep to my strategy I already said I was going to do. Going to take the best available running back on the board.
Sure.
And the reason for that is just I think I find that if you go away from that, you're almost, especially at pick 8, you're going to be sacrificing getting that guy who can be that potential number 1 or even top 5. Like if I pick like a wide receiver here, then it's like you said before, the drop off is pretty significant from those top 5 guys, so that I'm getting a lesser of that if I go any further down.
So I'm curious, because for me there isn't a clear-cut best back on the board here. Who do you think your best back on the board is at this point? And so the people at home know top backs that we're looking at right now are Joe Mixon, Kenyon Drake, Austin Eckler, and Miles Sanders.
For me, that's Kenyon Drake. I think that offense is going to be astounding this year. I have them probably top 3 offense in the league.
Okay.
Behind my Cowboys and the Chiefs.
Sure.
I think they're going to score a lot of touchdowns. He's going to get a lot of volume, and he's a pass catching back too, so he's going to put in work in both the passing and rushing. That's pretty much all I got to say about Kenyon Drake. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer there.
Yeah.
And some other big name backs just went off the board afterwards: Joe Mixon, Austin Eckler, Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb. A lot of impact guys. Going in that early 2 range.
Yeah, and this is basically what I expect to happen in most drafts coming up. Even as we get closer to the start of the season, you're going to see it is just going to be running back. So that's why usually you want to change up your strategy when the league's doing one thing, but this is one I don't think you can change up too much, because if you try and get too cute with it and try and go wide receivers, grab a high end tight end or a quarterback, you're going to be looking at running backs who are highly question marks. Maybe they're not even the starters. So I would say just don't get too cute in the first 2 rounds. Try and grab yourself at least one running back that you feel can anchor your team.
Yeah, and I'm about to take my second running back on the board, Aaron Jones, a guy who you guys know I'm really high on. I think his ceiling's tremendous. We saw it last year. I don't know if he's going to quite live up to that much again, but I don't see why he can't do even half as much. If you take away 7 touchdowns, he's still got 12 touchdowns there. That's
sure.
Pretty.
Well, and we touched on it in the best ball episode. I didn't like Aaron Jones when he was going in the latter half of the first. If you're getting Aaron Jones in the middle of the second, I'm kind of more okay with that. Especially because he is going after those guys like Kenyon Drake, Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, Austin Eckler. Those guys that you would expect to go before him.
Yeah, here I'm looking at it. This is actually a pretty tough one for me because I feel like a lot of the running backs I was hoping that might slip to me, like a Miles Sanders, maybe an Aaron Jones.
So you're still in on Miles Sanders?
I'm still in on Miles Sanders. I like the talent too much. I like what the team has been doing. They didn't, like I said, the moving out of Jordan Howard and not replacing him much. Like when they didn't sign Carlos Hyde, that was telling for me. But looking at this with limited time left on my clock, I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna try and take something I think has better upside because I don't think going CEH or Todd Gurley here is really the best bet. I'm going to try and just take what's best available and hope something better drops to me later. So
Sure.
I'm just going to go ahead and take Chris Godwin, who I think is going to be one of Brady's favorite targets because he loves to pound the slot.
See, I'm actually I'm much more down on Miles Sanders now than I was before after the Brandon Brooks injury.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge blow to the offensive line. I don't know exactly how far down I'm going to move him down yet. I'm still deciding on exactly how much I think it's going to impact his projections. But I was much more confident on Miles Sanders being a value where he's going, and now I feel as though he's being overdrafted based on that offense. It's June and they're already losing guys.
Yeah, I think that's also why I'm more okay with it. They're losing a lineman in June, so they have more time for that line. Because in season, I feel like that's where you get crippled more because line is a lot more about gelling and being able to work as a unit and trusting the guy on your side.
Yeah, but I mean, this guy tore his Achilles. Brandon
Well,
Brooks.
I know he's gone. I'm saying the replacement now has that much more time to work with the first team, get those reps in, and they can hopefully coach him up. I mean, I'm not super confident, but I like it now as opposed to in season.
So I'm on the board here at 211. I am going to go ahead and lock in Kenny Golladay. I think he's the best wide receiver by far still on the board, even though because we could use Fantasy Pros for our mock drafting. I think they have by far the best mock draft client.
Yeah.
They have the handy little tool where experts recommend, picking X player over Y player. Experts right there are recommending I take Allen Robinson. I don't like Allen Robinson at all, especially in that range.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pass on him for Kenny Golladay, who I think presents maybe a little less volume potential, but a lot higher upside. And then I'm going to flip around here, and I'm going to grab a second running back with my other pick at the turn. Top running backs on the board right now are Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Todd Gurley, Leonard Fournette, Melvin Gordon. Gurley's going to be the guy for me. I'm going to go ahead and lock him in. I really like the situation he's in. I think of the guys available there, he's the best combination of talent and opportunity.
Yeah. This is where it was. Gurley was going to be the guy for me. I felt like there was a good chance he could slip because I honestly felt like you might go with CEH there. So for me, this is, like I said, once again, it's just another tough decision. Going with a rookie running back, great he is in KC. It just, I want to buy in on it, but I feel like I would rather be the guy who waits and then gets him next year at the more premium price. So looking here, for me, it's between Juju Smith-Schuster and Leonard Fournette. I know I want to get running backs right now, and Fournette was a monster last year. And if things go right, that he could pay value at the top of the third for me, but it's not a clear-cut answer for me, honestly.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
Fournette is someone who he did a lot of work last year on passing, and you can't expect him to get that passing again.
Right.
They brought in Chris Thompson, who obviously he only catches passes pretty much. So it's like that. I mean, that right there is going to be a knock to Leonard Fournette's value because you don't bring in a guy like Chris Thompson if you aren't going to use him because he's not a backup to Leonard Fournette. Yeah. Like if Leonard Fournette goes down, Chris Thompson can't step in and do what he does. Yeah. That's still Raquel Armstead, I think.
Mm-hmm. So for the pick here with 10 seconds left, I'm going to go ahead and just lock in Juju Smith-Schuster. So I'm going a little against my strategy, but that's just kind of how the picks have fallen. So I'm not going to reach for lesser talent when I think Juju Smith-Schuster has all the talent to be a top receiver. He just had he had no quarterback last year.
He's a fantastic value there too.
Yeah.
If you think the Steelers are going to bounce back,
you have to buy in.
Juju was going in the top 5 wide receivers last year, and now you're getting him at the back of the third.
Exactly.
Now, I would preface this by saying, I know I said I wasn't going to do this, and I don't want to do this.
Yes, you do. Don't lie.
Do what you're going to do.
Me and Ian have talked about this a little bit, and it's not so far of a stretch that, picking Lamar Jackson here would be a terrible idea.
Whoa. don't include my name with drafting a quarterback in the third round. I said that that I believe people are going to do it, not that I think it's a good idea.
You said you didn't necessarily think it was a bad idea.
I mean, I'll just say I think it's a bad idea because I think you're drafting him. He has to give you back almost exactly what he did last year. I just don't think that's something you can project.
I'm not even looking for touchdown volume necessarily. I'm looking for that passing volume mixed with that rushing volume.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, I mean, if he puts up, half of what he did last year as far as rushing, he puts up 600 yards.
So if I'm going to play devil's advocate for your pick, because I know where you're coming from on this, the argument to draft him there is that he put up 1,200 yards last year in the ground, which is basically running back volume for your quarterback. So if you think he's going to do that again, then sure, I guess. I'm still not for it because there's other guys that I'd rather have in that range. But
and then with my next pick, now that I have my top 3 slots filled out, I am going to go with a guy who I've addressed that I liked a lot in the past, and I like even more this year, and that is Calvin Ridley. I think that offense is going to see a huge upswing this year. Matt Ryan's going to be back in form. He's got Todd Gurley to throw passes to. In addition to having a healthy O-line, I think that this year's Ridley's pop year. Him and Julio and Gurley are going to make that offense run like a well-oiled machine. And, that's pretty much all I really have to say about it. I mean,
I want to say I really, really like the wide receivers that are going at the back of the third, beginning of the fourth. I mean, that's the range where you're getting potentially guys like Thielen, Kupp, Woods, Ridley, A.J. Brown. Like, there's some really good names that are going fairly deep in drafts, honestly. Like guys that could easily return you high wide receiver 2, low wide receiver 1 value with a comparatively low draft capital. I think it's one of the reasons that it pays to go running back heavy early in drafts this year.
Yeah. So I was like I said, there's another one where I want to jump back on that running back train to get my running back 2, but it just feels I want to buy it on James Conner, but having 2 Pittsburgh players,
sure,
and his performance last year was less than to put it mildly. I mean, part of me wants to go take Cooper Kupp, but then I know I'm just gonna have to be shoveling in the later rounds to get some kind of running back depth. So I think with my 2 wide receivers that I feel very comfortable with, and there's some other guys I think I can go get later in later rounds, I'm just going to go ahead and lock up James Conner and hope that last year was more tied to Big Ben going down and that whole Steeler offense is going to be able to bounce back. So that's more of where my head's at, but I could easily see myself if the winds change even a little bit, I could see myself just taking Kupp here and walking away happy.
See, for me, there's a handful of guys in that same tier that I would rather take than James Conner. I'd rather have David Johnson. I'd rather have Jonathan Taylor. I'd rather have Mark Ingram. I might rather have David Montgomery than James Conner. I just don't believe in the talent anymore, I think. And that's my biggest issue there is like he gets hurt fairly easily.
But did you see that picture of his back where he looks inhuman? Kid's
great.
I'm saying he's putting some work in the gym. I'm just saying
this is hype season. Everyone's releasing their look how jacked I am because it's June photos. Like I personally am not going to own any shares of Connor this year because he's one of those players where he's not going to fall far enough for me to consider him a value because he's going to be going in this range. I'm never going to take him in the 4th round. Back of the 4th here, I'm in a little bit of a crossroads for who I want to take because, as I've stated, there are some running backs in this range that I really like. But I only have 1 wide receiver. I already have my 2 running back spots locked up. And there's a wide receiver on the board right now who I really didn't expect to fall to me. So I am going to go ahead and lock up A.J. Brown. Back of the 4th is great, crazy good value for A.J. Brown in my opinion. Mm-hmm. He's a guy who presents legit wide receiver 1 upside on that Titans offense as really the only legitimate passing option on that team. Jonnu Smith should take a step forward this year. The collection of guys behind him will do well enough to, provide actual football value. But as far as fantasy value goes, A.J. Brown's really the only receiver I care about. So I'm happy to take him at 4'11". And then at 5'2", I think I'm going to circle around and fill out my wide receiver core. I'm not a big Cortland Sutton or Devontae Parker fan. I don't like trusting quarterbacks that I don't know. Tua might play game one. Like, we don't know how much Ryan Fitzpatrick we're going to get. If I knew I was going to have 16 games or even 8 games of Ryan Fitzpatrick, Devontae Parker's a no-brainer here. But I don't trust that Tua is going to turn in the same value that Ryan Fitzpatrick will. So Devontae Parker is a no-go for me at this round. And then Cortland Sutton's in the same boat where I just don't trust Drew Lock to be a good fantasy quarterback. And then they have 3 running backs there, all of whom are going to demand touches. For me, I'm going to go ahead and draft DJ Chark here, a guy who I'm high on anyway. I think that offense is going to be slinging the ball. He's kind of like A.J. Brown, where there's not a lot of people behind him to steal touches from him. And we've seen that Gardner Minshew can play. So I think he's a pretty safe bet at this range to turn in good value, especially as my wide receiver 3.
Yeah. I'm bumming right now because Cortland Sutton was going to be my clear pick right there. I'm kind of on the opposite mindset. I think what we saw glimpses of real talent from Drew Lock last year.
Sure.
And Cortland Sutton's going into his 3rd year now. I just feel like everything is starting to align for that team. And Denver, has a history of they know how to produce good offenses. I'm less in on the Jacksonville Jaguars, who will have a flash year and start looking like they're putting it together, and then just fall back to earth to be one of the worst 3 teams in football. So when I look, but now for my pick right now, what I'm looking at is I'm not a huge fan of much of it. So honestly,
there's a lot of ugly stuff on the board.
There's a lot of ugly stuff here. So I think this is one where I'm going to try and go ahead and just lock in a little bit higher end of a tight end, a guy I'm high on, in Darren Waller. Just because
it's not a bad range for that.
It's it's about fair value. I don't think I'm getting any kind of discount right there, but
middle of the 5th is for a guy who came in as the tight end 2 last year with all those receptions that he had. That's pretty good value for him.
Yeah, like I said, it's just Carr loves his tight end. They're usually his top target, and if he keeps trending up as he has been every year, it's like a slow tick, but if he's in the 42 range for yardage, 4,200, I think that could produce great numbers for Darren Waller.
And full point PPR obviously gives Waller a little bit of a boost.
Mm-hmm. What are you looking at, Frankie?
Well, I did want to get...
you're going to take Dak Prescott, obviously.
Yeah. No.
He is... A report did just come out. He's going to be signing that franchise tag on Monday, so that's one thing to just keep in the back of your mind.
Well, seeing as I have Lamar Jackson right, Dak Prescott would probably be a terrible pick.
What if Lamar Jackson gets hurt, Frankie?
Yeah.
Well,
why don't you put in a petition to get?
I was going to pick Mr. DK Metcalf here, so in
DK Metcalf.
Vitalik situation, I am a little bit bummed, but you know what? I'm going to take a gamble here on a guy that has, obviously been a stud in the past, Mr. T.Y. Hilton.
So you aren't worried that he's old and he's getting a new quarterback? Because that's a big thing that worries me about him, is that we've seen that T.Y. has issues staying on the field. He's in the twilight of his career. Obviously, I love the talent, but
Ian, you can never plan for injury.
You can't, but there's a difference between planning for injury and just hedging against it.
Well, that's why I didn't pick A.J. Green there.
True.
I think that he's just in a better quarterback situation this year. Phillip Rivers likes to throw the ball a lot, likes to throw the ball long. So, he could benefit from that. He's not 100% guaranteed to. That's why I said it was a gamble.
So.
And another guy who I'm going to pick right here, less of a gamble in my opinion, my Cowboys' own Michael Gallup. I think he showed a lot of promise last year, and that rounds up my receiving core. I'm pretty happy with that, with Calvin Ridley, T.Y., and Gallup. Not superstar studded, but I think they're going to be a good pair with Kenyon Drake and Aaron Jones to get the job done.
It's funny because when I saw he was still on the board, I was like, oh, yeah, Frankie's picking Gallup.
Yeah.
I saw it coming a mile away.
I like Gallup. It's just I think he's going to lose a little too much to CeeDee Lamb. I don't think CeeDee Lamb's going to be a great fantasy option this year just because...
He's just going to be there to steal touches from the other guys.
Basically, he's going to be good for the team, but he's going to be bad fantasy.
He's going to be a vampire.
Yep. Here, I'm just going to go ahead and try and get some more running back depth. I'm just going to go ahead and take the top guy on a run-heavy offense. That's, Mark Ingram.
God, you bastard.
So, not much thought for me. It's just I need running backs. He's proven he can do it, and he's on a team that wants to run the ball. So I'm assuming they're going to want to pull some of those carries away from Lamar to keep him healthy, and just put him on the old guy you just got, and then let him run off into the sunset because now they have J.K. Dobbins as well.
So on that vein of thinking,
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and do almost the same thing, actually, because I do want to get a third running back, and this is a range where I think the running backs are coming back around in the back of the 6th to, like, beginning of the 8th. There's a lot of interesting names on the board there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lock up Raheem Mostert. They're a team that ran more than almost anybody in football last year, second most attempts in the league. They got rid of one of their guys, and a guy that they used not heavily, but enough to be impactful towards their other backs. And then they signed Raheem Mostert to more money. Yes, Jerick McKinnon's still there, Tevin Coleman's still there, but they combine for a below average back. Like, neither of them really scare me as far as threats to Raheem Mostert's touches. I think last year was kind of, admittedly he isn't a little bit of an older running back, but he never really had a lot of tread on the tires. I think last year was a big breaking out year for Raheem Mostert, and even if he doesn't get the same value that he had last year, when you're taking him at the back of the 6th as a guy who could, potentially be like a 250 plus carry guy, that's huge. There's not a lot of guys in this range who present that kind of upside.
Yeah.
And then the wide receiver I wanted just went off the board at 7-1. I was going to take Brandon Cooks at this pick for very similar logic. He's the target. He should be the target hog in that offense. We've seen him be consistent year in, year out, and there's not a lot of guys in this range that are going to have his target upside. He's off the board now, so I'm going to go ahead and draft my quarterback here because it's really tough to let Russell Wilson fall past 7-2, honestly. I don't typically like drafting quarterbacks in this range, but Russell Wilson also doesn't typically fall to the beginning of the 7th. That's a range where it's like, all right, he's fallen far enough that I think that the value is there to take a guy that could finish top 3.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, looking back at this right now, it seems like most of the teams are kind of taking the same flow, which is hurting what I'm trying to do and go back and get some running backs or get some quality wide receivers. So
sure.
Now that I've got 3 running backs, I want to finish out that wide receiver slot. And a lot of the guys I was liking right there, Marvin Jones was a big one I was looking at.
He is consistent.
Cooks, but I didn't think he was going to get past you there. I completely believe that he was either going before you or at your pick. So, like I said, looking down here, there's not much I'm a huge fan of. I'm honestly probably just going to go with Sterling Shepard here just because
Sure.
I feel like he's overlooked so much in that offense. Danny Dimes came out and showed he actually had some talent. I mean, when they projected him out to a full 16-game season, he would have easily broken Baker's record of touchdowns. He didn't turn the ball over too much. He just kind of had a fumbling issue.
I mean, he had 18 fumbles, I think.
Yeah, his fumbling numbers were ridiculous.
That's turning the ball over too much in my book.
Yeah, the fumbling number. I'm talking about the interception numbers, where he's supposed to be. I think that line is going to get a little bit better now that there's some health returning. But overall, Sterling Shepard should be the number 1 in that offense. He's got the talent, and I'm just going to go ahead and log him in.
Looks like.
Huh, I guess I talked a little too long, but I got a guy I was going to take anyways. No, never mind.
Who'd you get?
I saw Matt Ryan. I was like, oh, good. I got a guy I was going to take with my next pick anyways. So give me Josh Allen, but I'm fine with
Josh Allen's still good there.
He's fine there.
I would have preferred Matt Ryan, but
yeah, Matt Ryan was more the guy, but it's another strategy to look at, taking Josh Allen and how I want to build around that. This probably means I'm going to try and take a bigger upside quarterback in the back of the draft to see if I can get someone who's a little bit higher upside than Allen.
Yeah, just to go into what I'm going to do, speaking about the Arizona offense before, guy who I'm going to draft here kind of fell at that flex position, Christian Kirk.
Interesting.
I mean, he's going to be probably the number 2 there now.
He should be because Larry's 400 years old. I mean, there's a lot of bodies in that offense that could be good, but Christian Kirk, it seems like he's the most primed to take the step forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think that. I mean, I liked what I saw last year from him.
And Nuke can't catch everything.
Yeah, I think that for me, I'm just down on Kirk because for some reason Larry Fitz always finds a way to just stay relevant, even at his advanced stage. With all those extra targets going around, I just feel like Christian Kirk's going to have to fight to really keep himself relevant there.
There was a run on tight ends.
Yeah, there was.
In between picks. Gronk, Goddard, Higbee, Hurst. I'm like puking in my mouth about 3 of those because I think that's way too early for Gronk, Goddard, or Higbee. It brings a tear to my eye to see Hurst go, although that's kind of what I expect with how the picks fall. Like Hurst rarely falls to me unless I want to reach on him. But it makes me sad that I missed.
What are you looking at here? 805.
I am going to be a little bit earlier on tight ends than I wanted to be, seeing as there was that run on tight ends. I am going to lock up Austin Hooper here.
So I want to bring up a counterpoint to that. Go ahead and lock Hooper, and then I'll... Because something that a different direction that I like to go in is to not chase the runs. You see a run like that. That to me means, okay, cool. I'm probably good to wait on tight end now for a little bit, especially for a one starter position like quarterback or tight end. If I see a run on that, I'm like, okay. A good chunk of them just went off the board. That means that a bunch of teams already filled up their tight end slot. I can probably wait a little bit and try and grab some value at other positions and then still circle around a pick or two later to lock up my tight end or quarterback.
Yeah. And this is one where I'm honestly looking at it, I'm like, hey, Sterling Shepard's there. So that's one of the things that I like that you can do in the middle picks.
Yep.
Is you can play that hold off and hope the ADP holds and that guy you want there is still there. I'm actually I'm just going to go ahead and not think about it, not overtalk, and just going to lock in Sterling Shepard for all the reasons I stated on my previous pick.
So before I go into who I'm picking here, I do want to just pick your brain a little bit about that because I have conflicting thoughts on that Giants receiving core. It seems like there's 3 guys that everyone, or that they have that could all be the number 1 on that offense with Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, and Golden Tate.
Yeah.
And for me, even though 8-7 isn't a bad spot for Sterling Shepard, obviously, you're not paying a huge price for him, but there's other guys in that range that I'd rather take because I really do feel like it's just sort of a dart throw as who's going to end up as the number 1 in that offense. It could easily be Darius Slayton or Golden Tate, and they're both going way later than Sterling Shepard.
Right.
So for me, I personally would rather not take Sterling Shepard or let him fall and then maybe take him a round or 2 later if he does fall that far.
Yeah.
Rather than gobbling him up there at the expense of someone else.
Yeah. I mean, when I look at it, you see Slayton actually, his ADP per PFF is actually 100. He's actually going a little earlier right now than Sterling Shepard, which I find to be quite crazy. I mean, I know Shepard's dealt with a couple of injuries, but Slayton hasn't shown us as much, I think, as Shepard, and I think Shepard really is ready to take that step forward. And then Golden Tate just feels like he's the safe option. So if you're taking him, you're kind of you're punting it.
So I am going to lock up Darius Slayton here. Speaking to what I was just saying, like I think Darius Slayton offers a lot of big play potential. He looked electric last year on that Giants team. I'm getting him cheaper than Sterling Shepard currently in drafts. And I just think he's a nice wide receiver dart throw to give me some depth that could pan out. Because he is my first bench spot too. So it's like, worst case scenario, he doesn't really do much and I just don't play him.
Yeah.
And then this is where I'm going to have to get a little loosey-goosey with the ADP. One of the downsides of picking at the turn or picking near the turn, is you have like 20 picks that go in between your pick and your next pick.
Yeah.
The next guy that I'm looking at here, very, very, very small chance he's still on the board at the back of the 10th when my next pick comes around.
Yeah.
So, Frankie, you're going to be mad at me, but I'm going to go ahead and lock up Ronald Jones II.
You know what?
He's a guy who everyone is treating like he's done. Forget that he's played like 2 seasons in the NFL. He just got a consistency upgrade at quarterback at least because Brady's better at keeping the ball on the field. The rest of the offense is still good. Keyshawn Vaughn he's just a rookie. He's like a throwaway basically to push the guy. I mean, everyone's treating him like he got drafted like Jonathan Taylor. He didn't.
Yeah.
Like, I am loving the shade that is going towards Ronald Jones in his ADP. I will take a guy that could be the locked up starter every day of the week at the beginning of the 9th.
I'm glad that you brought up nabbing him from me again, because he was literally on my screen, ready to just click, because I know he wasn't looking at him at all.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah, here I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Darius Geis just because there was so much hype around this kid coming out of college. And then, of course, he tears his
I like Geis here.
I just think there's so much that we haven't seen with him that is forcing his ADP down, and I think he could be a breakout steal that not everyone's really looking at. So he's somebody I'm willing to stash on my bench and just hold him. He's sitting on my bench, so it's, if he doesn't do anything, then he's just sitting there.
Sure.
So.
All right, so 9-8. What are you looking at here, Frankie?
Well, seeing as...
You gonna take Keyshawn Vaughn and just bet against me?
I'm not going to call your bluff that hard. What I am going to do is I'm going to reach a little bit further down than I want to.
Oh, there's no bluff here. That is pure, unadulterated Ronald Jones love.
Yeah, see, I do like his price a lot, so I can't fault you for reaching on that pick.
Yeah.
Because he definitely wasn't going to be there next time he came around to you.
Ronald Jones not going to cuddle on the Ferris wheel, get some cotton candy. I'm going to win him a teddy bear.
I am going to try and lock up a guy who I think could be the starter, even if not for the full season. Mr. Marlon Mack.
Okay. I like Mack there.
Mack balled out last year. I mean, I'm getting him at...
He's
9-8.
regularly a slept-on running back, honestly.
He's just not a sexy name. I mean...
Oh, yeah, you never want to have a guy on your team named Marlon. Like,
He's kind of been that guy, though, before, where he's had, like, that... Like, he's definitely had that RB1 potential before and been RB1.
He's electric when he's on the field. His issues are they don't use him for pass catching, and he has had injury issues in the past.
I think that is his biggest crux, is the pass catching. That's why.
I mean, his biggest crux now is Jonathan Taylor, but
yeah, he's basically was Alfred Morris.
Well, I think his biggest crux now is that they still want to use Hines for some reason, even though they have Taylor and Mack.
But at this pick, though, I agree with you. Marlon Mack's great value at 9-8. Even if he's not the starter for the full season, you're going to get plenty of value out of him for the time that you have him on your team. And who knows? Maybe Jonathan Taylor gets hurt, and all of a sudden you get a starting running back in the 9th round.
And I think here I am going to just pick another receiver that I think could have a lot of promise.
Sure.
And it's going to be Jerry Jeudy. I mean, that Denver offense, I think, depending on how Drew Lock plays, could be something special. And at the end of the day, he's not a starter. He's just somebody who's going to be plug and play off my bench. I think that...
I know this isn't exactly a hot take, but Jeudy was my favorite wide receiver in the draft this year. I think that it was actually a really good landing spot for him.
Yeah.
Cortland Sutton takes the top off the defense. It should allow Jeudy to work underneath.
Yeah, I like everything about that pick from Denver, and I think he's somebody I'm iffy if I want him this year, but next year you'll definitely see me keeping an eye on that kid.
Yeah, I think without any kind of sample size in the NFL, I think it's, not really a gamble. I think he is going to get some volume. He's going to get targets.
He's definitely he's the number 2 on that offense,
yeah.
And he's a wildly talented receiver.
Yeah.
I agree. I think where he's going, you're getting a lot of nice upside for him for not really much cost.
Yeah, I think it more depends on how Drew Lock plays. Like I said, if he goes out there and balls out, I think Drew's numbers are going to...
If Drew Lock fills his pants with poop, then it's going to be a bad season for all of the options on that team.
Yeah, looking at mine, I want to get some wide receiver depth. I could see myself easily just going for Jamison Crowder and taking what I would consider the easy way out. I'm going to get a guy who's going to get thrown the ball 100 times and still never make it to 1,000 yards. So PPR wise, that's great. He'll just turn in
14 catches a game for 78 yards.
Yeah, he'll do that all year long. And especially with Robbie Anderson leaving, I'm slowly talking myself into this pick as I was trying to slam on him a little bit, because my other option here, I'm looking at Mike Williams, and I'm just hoping for that 4th year breakout. Hey, maybe this is the year.
Ooh, did you hear that the Chargers are looking at Colin Kaepernick?
Hey, that's a guy who's got some skill, and he's he played at one point.
Yeah, so did Tyrod.
I get it. I understand.
Tyrod Taylor
But
is a
it's just
500 quarterback, Ian.
Some receivers are
Is 500 number of teams he's played on?
So I'm gonna go ahead.
And his record, yes.
There's one where I know I'm not getting one if I don't get the other. Like, I'm gonna go with Jamison Crowder just because he's definitely not getting back to me, and maybe the hate is there enough that Mike Williams slides back to me.
I just can't believe that those are the two you're looking at. To me, I would have rather been looking at a guy who actually went off the board, Golden Tate, Preston Williams. Both of them are guys that I would prefer over either of the two.
Golden Tate was off my board mainly because I already have another Giants. I don't want to keep having too many shares in the same team.
That's fair.
Preston Williams, like I said, your reason for not wanting Devontae Parker, I'm the same way. I don't want the number 2 on the team.
I think it's a little different though with Preston Williams, where Preston Williams doesn't run the same kind of routes that Parker does. He's more of a volume guy. I think that gives him a little more safety than Parker has. For me, I'm going with another running back dart throw here. He's a guy who at 10-11, with where the Ravens drafted him, I think J.K. Dobbins is kind of not necessarily a no-brainer, but he presents a ton of upside. I mean, Mark Ingram's old. Let's face it, he's like 31, and he was literally never the guy until last year. He was always the guy behind Kamara.
Yeah.
I don't have a ton of faith that Mark Ingram is going to keep turning in these stellar performances at running back. I don't think the Ravens do either, or they wouldn't have drafted J.K. Dobbins. It's some of the same logic that I used for Ronald Jones, but when you get a guy this late in the draft at running back who could potentially be a running back 1, that raises their value a lot in my book, because running back 1s are hard to find. And when I say running back 1, I mean running back 1 on their team, not running back 1 like fantasy scoring wise. Like, they could be the number 1 guy on their squad.
Right.
And the number 1 guy on that Ravens team is a good guy to have because they love to pound the rock.
Exactly.
And then I'm going to turn around and I'm finally going to draft my tight end here. I'm going to skip over a lot of guys that I like for a guy that I love. I'm going to draft TJ Hawkinson, who I think is the breakout tight end of the year. Honestly, the fact that I can get him at 11-2 is like, I just click his name and like dollar signs appear in my eyes.
Yeah.
Like Scrooge McDuck just diving into my swimming pool full of money. I love the fact that I can get TJ Hawkinson at 11-2 because I think he provides a lot of the same. I mean, honestly, tight end's a wasteland anyway.
Yeah.
So like when I say I think he has a lot of the same upside as guys above him, it's because he could easily pull a Darren Waller, be drafted very late or not at all, and end up finishing in the top 3 at the tight end position because it's Travis Kelce, George Kittle, and then question mark.
Yeah. Here, of course, as this draft is seeming to work out, any guy I've been having my eye on goes
11-5.
It goes right in front of me. This guy at 11-5 and 11-7, they can both, go kick rocks. But I'm considering here swapping off of, just because right now running backs, the guys you're grabbing in here,
They're not great.
They're not great. There's not much to hope for.
So actually, let me ask you this before you make your pick.
Go for it.
Speaking of running backs, with where we are right now with the Dalvin Cook saga, do you take Alexander Madison here? Is he on your radar?
Slightly. He is one of the better handcuffs out there. Like, I'm surprised Tony Pollard's even in the same conversation.
He's really good, honestly.
I'm more interested in potentially grabbing Darrell Henderson over him because Darrell Henderson could he's a guy who could take that.
Sure, it's a rookie in Darrell Henderson.
Right.
And they drafted Darrell Henderson high last year.
Exactly.
So
I'm going to go ahead and lock him up.
Yeah, I don't hate that.
Just for some depth, because I think after like Alexander Madison and maybe Tevin Coleman, if you think he's going to be the guy after all these years. The other thing I was looking at was actually going defense there because there were still some stellar defenses out there.
And that's not a bad time to start looking at your defense. I mean, the big thing that you lose here if you go defense is you're losing on a potential high value dart throw, because obviously none of the guys you're picking in this range are stone cold locks. If they were, they wouldn't be going in this range.
Right.
But this is where you can get a lot of really valuable dart throws.
Well, yeah, and speaking of dart throws, I mean, you guys have seen me do this in the past before. This is about the point of the draft where I start grabbing not necessarily my handcuffs, but other people's handcuffs. I think that it's not Well, while it may seem like a wasted pick in other people's eyes,
I am going to counterpoint you on that.
I had no doubt that you were going to.
No, I'm
But
all in on
it's
that.
it's like a guy like Alexander Madison. We don't know what Dalvin Cook's situation is. He's not my handcuff, so it's not like I'm picking the Chase Edmonds to Kenyon Drake. I'm picking a guy who could potentially be the starter on another team, and I have another starter on my team.
So Madison is the one exception here. So I used to be a handcuff guy. You guys know that. In recent years I've stopped drafting handcuffs because I feel that it's a wasted pick. You're basically trying to plan for injury, and the handcuffs for running backs, they're typically guys that don't have any value until they have all the value. The one exception to that this year, and that's only until we get more clarity on what Dalvin Cook is doing, is Alexander Madison to me, because we know Alexander Madison is someone who, if he is in the Dalvin Cook role, he's a top 12 running back.
Yeah.
And unlike Tony Pollard or Chase Edmonds, these high-value guys that have guys in front of them, technically Alexander Madison doesn't have a guy in front of him right now because Dalvin Cook's holding out. So if Dalvin Cook's holdout goes into the season, you have a top 12 running back in the 12th round.
And
Completely agree.
I'm going to go off of running backs right here. I'm going to go and draft another receiver, just kind of as a plug and play for the week. It's going to be Robbie Anderson.
I hate that so much.
Yes. Again, no surprise there.
He only wants to run straight, and I had so much promise with him. Like those
Teddy
flashes.
Bridgewater likes the underneath routes, right?
Yes. I mean, I don't know. Someone's going to catch the long ball in Carolina.
Yeah, Curtis Samuel. The guy who's
You
still
can
there.
run 2 outs. It's fine.
Yeah. Like I said, right now you're really just kind of shooting for the moon. That's why I usually like to wait for quarterback here, because there's a lot of great quarterback names and tight end names. Like Noah Fant's still here.
Honestly,
Big Ben. Aaron Rodgers is still here if you want to believe in him.
he was the one that I was going to... it's like, this is... The hate on Rodgers is getting silly.
Yeah. There's part of me, like, I feel like I need to take him here, but, like, he doesn't help my team that much. That's why I want to go defense or with someone that's a dart throw. And funny enough, the 2 dart throws that I was looking at for wide receiver depth that I thought were going to be very quality picks, 1206 took them, and the other one went up at 1202. I was looking at taking the 2 and the 3 on KC because that offense produces points, and I want a piece of it. Mecole Hardman's the guy I think you want in that offense if you're not getting Tyreek Hill. So he was who I was hoping to get. Fortunately, didn't fall to me. So I'm going to look elsewhere. And like I said, I'm looking at my defense, or I'm looking at Rodgers. And I think I'm going to go, even with Rodgers there, I'm going to go defense because at least that's going to be scoring points for my team as opposed to Rodgers sitting on my bench or me having to play the hot potato game between the two. So I'll take the guaranteed points that are going on to my actual team.
Okay. Well, I mean, and to be fair, too, I mean, if you don't get Rodgers... So... What I like about Rodgers is everyone forgot that Rodgers was the best quarterback in football for like 7 years. And he's been just kind of like mediocre for him the last couple of years. And everyone's like, well, he's basically dead.
Yeah.
If you can get Rodgers this late in the draft, I'm just going to go on record and say that's a steal. That's a steal of the century potentially, because I'm slowly talking myself into Rodgers this year, and I may actually end up owning a lot of Rodgers because he's a guy who traditionally has been a very elite fantasy option at the end of Mike McCarthy's tenure out there when there's a lot of friction between them. We saw his performance start to fall off a little bit. And then last year, he got a new head coach installing a new system, and his best wide receiver was hurt. So obviously his numbers were going to be down. Second year with Matt LaFleur... No reason to expect Devontae Adams to be injured this year. Someone could be getting the number 1 quarterback in fantasy football in the 12th round this year with some no-name guy in Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy how far he's fallen.
Yeah.
I am personally going to go in a different direction with this pick just because I need some more depth. I'm going to pick N'Keal Harry here.
I like that pick. That's actually who I was looking at if he could fall.
Yeah, and it's like 12-11. N'Keal Harry, obviously, we don't know what Jarrett Stidham's going to bring for quarterback, but 2-11, it's far enough down that it doesn't... Worst case scenario, N'Keal Harry sucks and I cut him. Like, because if Jarrett Stidham's a bum, then no one's catching passes in New England, and we just wash our hands and move on. And that's why I like him in this range, because like there's no lost value for me if he sucks.
Yeah, at this point you're basically, for players that are wide receivers, running backs, and quarterbacks, you basically just do it. It's like early waivers.
Oh, yeah.
You're just taking juicy names off that waiver wire and hoping you hit on something.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So there's no risk in taking a guy who was drafted in the first round. Belichick doesn't do that often. Granted, he doesn't have a great hit percentage with wide receivers, but like I said, he was one of the top-rated wide receivers in that class. And
one last point for me for N'Keal Harry too is like Brady doesn't like rookies. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
I think with Brady gone and Stidham under center, there could be a lot of chemistry because obviously the backups they don't work with the one. So Stidham wasn't working with Jules; he was working with, Harry. There could be some pre-built chemistry there between Stidham and Harry that we aren't factoring in that actually vaults Harry to where Jules, especially with Jules being as old as he is, there's no guarantee that Jules is still Jules. Harry could step into that role this season with that bond he potentially has with Stidham.
Yeah.
And then for my next pick, I just took the Ravens. It's that point in the draft for me where I draft a defense, and the Ravens are an elite fantasy defense year in, year out. They're a squad you can count on. I'm happy just plugging them in and streaming people if I don't like the Ravens matchup.
Yeah, here, like I said, this guy's a little early. You can probably get him literally at the last bit of your draft, but I'm just going to go ahead and take a guy who could become the number one wide receiver on his team for the Colts.
Paris Campbell?
Paris Campbell.
Nice.
I'm going to lock him in. No worries about it because T.Y. Hilton's at the end of his career. This is his second year out of that system, and now he's got a quarterback that likes to sling it. Just all those right there make a great dart throw, I think.
Well, and like we said for T.Y. Hilton too, it's like with his injury history and his age, there's a very real possibility that Paris Campbell, who's just a bigger, faster T.Y. Hilton, skill wise, ends up in that starting role, receiving the rock from Phillip Rivers, who isn't afraid to throw picks and force it into tight coverage.
Yeah, he can. We've seen Phillip Rivers can at least produce a wide receiver too. Yeah. In his worst years, he can produce Keenan Allen into a wide receiver too.
Yeah. So, Frankie, with your 13-8, who are you looking at?
I was initially looking at another wide receiver, and then I was initially looking at picking a tight end, but then Fant went, and I kind of...
I mean, there's still some good tight ends on the board. You can still get Jonnu Smith here. That's it.
Yeah, I was looking at Jonnu Smith.
If you want to be one of those people that always gambles on the Pittsburgh tight end and never really ever pays off, you can go get Eric Ebron.
Oh my God, he was someone who I was so. Just a quick sidebar. He was someone I was so high on going into this season back in March, just because it's Eric Ebron. Vance McDonald sucks. They love to use their receiving options. They don't really have anyone else besides Juju. And then I started selling myself more on James Washington and Deontay Johnson, and I just remembered that I hate Eric Ebron, and all of a sudden I'm just right back out on him.
Yeah, it's not an easy one to try and sell yourself on. So
I was on him for like a month and a half, and then I was like, oh wait, no, I hate Eric Ebron.
Yeah, I did end up going with Jonnu Smith there, and I'm going to do something I don't typically do. Actually, never mind. I'm not going to do something I don't typically do.
Good talk.
I had a thought about it. I am just going to be that guy who drafts.
In retrospective, I will not do what I previously thought.
I am going to draft my last wide receiver and fill out my bench here, and it is going to be Hunter Renfrow out of the Las Vegas Raiders.
Now, why Hunter Renfrow? I want to know the logic behind that.
Okay.
I don't like it. I don't see it or like it.
Well, Derek Carr, as you know, doesn't win games. They're often behind. They're often losing.
Okay.
So they're throwing the ball a lot.
Sure.
And I think that Derek Carr as a quarterback gets a little bit too much shit for the numbers he puts up. Like, I forget exactly who we were talking about in our quarterback episode, but I know I brought this up then. I think it was 21 and 8 touchdowns to interceptions. And we said that was a bad year for somebody. And I mean, that's not necessarily a bad year.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Yeah, the turnover ratio's there. Like I said, you look at his numbers; they just steadily climb up at just a slow clip. Like I said, he broke 4,000 last year for the first time. The previous year, he kept going up.
So just to be clear, you don't think 21 touchdowns is a bad year?
No.
Okay.
All right.
I respectfully disagree, but
yeah.
if you want to draft some, 20 touchdown quarterbacks with no rushing upside.
Oh, I didn't draft the quarterback. I drafted the receiver.
Right. So if you want to draft receivers tied to 20 touchdown quarterbacks, I mean, just, Sam Darnold is probably available as well. You could go out and get Denzel Mims.
Whoa, don't you talk about Sammy D like that.
You could even go below 20. I think Tua is still there.
Yeah, here it's real dry at this point. You're just kind of throwing at something that, hey,
this
maybe.
is your like dart throw that you can see what they do week 1, and if they suck, you just burn their jersey and set them free.
Yeah, like you look down and you're looking like John Ross, Randall Cobb, and it's just all of it. This is normally why I like to sit on quarterbacks. Like I could get Big Ben here. I can get Big Ben. I can get if you want to try and roll the dice on a rookie quarterback, I can get Joe Burrow. I can get Jared Goff, who I think will have a bounce back year.
Sure.
I'm probably going to grab one of these guys, but it's just I feel like I can just wait another round. But I'll just go ahead and just lock up Jared Goff right now. Surely, just purely because I think that offense is going to come back to form a little bit. I do believe in Sean McVay having an offensive mind, and that he'll be able to scheme up something new to try and either trick NFL defenses for a year or just something that can work with what he has.
So I'm actually going to go a similar direction with you. This is more of a process over what my team currently is pick, because as I say when I picked Russell Wilson, he doesn't typically fall to me. So typically I'm drafting a quarterback later in the draft. Russell Wilson usually isn't a guy that's on my squad. There's usually no quarterback on my squad before round 10. When I do that, I usually draft 2 guys. Because if the first guy sucks, I want a second high upside guy to round out my squad. And, the people that you're picking in this range, they really don't matter anyway.
Yeah.
So, like, for me, I'd rather have someone that I think is a legitimate, locked and loaded quarterback who could, really turn in, like, top 1 value, potentially. For me, that guy's Joe Burrow. Obviously, it doesn't matter as much with Russell Wilson because he's not going to start over Russell Wilson on my team. But I'm going to draft Joe Burrow here in most leagues if he's there, because the more I look at that Bengals offense, the more I like it. So I know Joe Burrow didn't play as much as people generally like in college, but he is a talented quarterback. You can't have the pedigree that he had and as many people being on him as everyone is without there being something there. It's the old saying, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah.
And then we add on that he has a great wide receiver core. I mean, even without Adrian Green, it's still a great core. And if Adrian Green comes back, it's one of the best in football. He has a great running back. He has a pretty good offensive line. Zach Taylor's a good coach. Last year was his first year and it was a rocky one, but there was a lot of things going wrong on that team last year.
A lot of injury, a lot of just
Joe Burrow could be that Patrick Mahomes, that Lamar Jackson, that quarterback that we always see going in the late rounds, who jumps out and surprises everyone, and ends up being that splash top 3 pick, or that top 3 quarterback that no one really saw coming, because he has all the pieces there. He has an offensive-minded coach, a bad defense, a great wide receiver core, and a pass-catching running back. It really all just falls on, is he going to be good or not? And then with my final pick, I'm just going to go ahead and draft Brandon Ayuk. Not much thought there, so having just a dart throw. I like the potential upside that he offers. Maybe he wins me a week or 2 on a bye week, and he's someone who I'll probably cut him week 1 or week 2 if I see something sexy on the waiver wire.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not putting too much heart into these last few guys here. It's mainly just guys that there's something that jumps off the page, whether it be a team I like, a rookie with some upside, or just a position where they could take some steps forward. So like wide receiver, I think is pretty drained. Like this is where a lot of the quarterback, tight end, defense. This is where you want to take those guys.
Absolutely.
So for me, I will just go ahead and gamble that I'll just go ahead and take Justice Hill here, just because he was a hype guy for last year to take in late in the drafts, and
basically same idea as J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, same idea as J.K. Dobbins. They liked him, and if things go wrong with, like I said, it's kind of handcuffing him. J.K. Dobbins is the better handcuff to have, at least going into the season. But there's a situation where Justice Hill could be the number 1 on a run-heavy team.
And we saw last year, too. Even guys like Gus Edwards still had standalone value. on that Ravens team because they run so much.
Yeah.
Obviously, Gus Edwards is out now because they have J.K. Dobbins, and Gus Edwards is the worst back on the team now. So there is still some bye-week value to having Justice Hill.
And
who you rounding us out with, Frankie?
Yeah, with my last pick, I mean, I still need a defense, so I should probably pick one.
I mean, unless you just want to lose this, if you want to just sign yourself up for the L this draft, then
yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and pick New Orleans there.
I like it. They're a good upside draft, or a good upside pick. Defense is a crapshoot, but New Orleans has some good players, good coach. I'm fine with them. So, Frankie, we're going to start with you. Let's go around the table and give out our draft grade. Give the number grade out of 100, not the letter grade, if you would.
I got a 76 out of 100. That was
woof.
That was not great for me.
Yeah, I definitely felt like I took a little bit of a step back from my first one, which I really felt was firing on all cylinders, but I still ended up with an 87.
So I'm going to take the W for this first one then. I got a 90 out of 100. I will say, and this is something to consider if you do your mock drafts through Fantasy Pros, not that I'm throwing shade at the service that they offer. It is still probably the best mock draft software out there, and I've tried a lot of them.
Yeah.
They do weight really good starters heavily. So when you have a top 3, top 5 pick and you can get a Christian McCaffrey or Saquon Barkley or Ezekiel Elliott, it makes it really easy to come into that 90 to 100 point range because you put yourself on a good starting foot.
Yeah, as we saw with a team that we wouldn't recommend people going with, the computer ended up taking the number 1 spot, where they just went Christian McCaffrey, Patrick Mahomes, and Travis Kelce. But then the rest of their team was a little bit on the iffy side. But because they had the number 1 at 3 positions, that kind of carried a lot more weight. So that's one thing I would like to see tweaked. But then again, your bench isn't scoring your points, so I see where they're thinking with that. But
so I actually came in 3rd. You came in 4th. Frankie came in 8th. I had the 2nd best starters. You had the 4th best starters. Frankie had the 9th best starters. I felt like that was a pretty good draft. I'm interested to see how because we're going to randomize the positions. We might do half point. We may even do a standard draft. No one does standard anymore, but we're going to mix it up as we go through. So it's not the same thing every time, as we can give, good advice to different formats.
Yeah.
But I felt like this went pretty well. Honestly, if this was my team going into the NFL season, I'd be thrilled to get to roll this out there on a week in, week out basis.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I was a lot of my picks were guys slipping just before where I wanted to take them, so I was kind of pivoting off to other guys. So overall, it was a lot of me having to scramble and reevaluate what I wanted. I kind of got away from with the first 3 picks, I really want to aim to get 3 running backs, but it just wasn't there, and I wasn't comfortable just reaching for a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I was considering it with Gurley, but I felt like I was just getting more value with Godwin.
So don't force it, basically.
Don't force it sometimes, but if there's a guy who you think is just the money pick this year, if you think Gurley's the money pick this year, take him. Unless your league allows for draft pick trading, try and see if you can slide back. You're offering the second overall, that second higher pick in the second round. You're just like, hey, I want to slide back a few picks. I kind of like some guys around the turn. You can get more back from that guy who maybe wants to move up and who loves CEH, who loves guys maybe like Chubb falls, and you can kind of sell some money in that.
Any final thoughts, Frankie, before we move to the beer check?
I wish that we could take these mock drafts and put them into a private league of some kind and just see how accurate this is.
You technically can, but
can we do that?
You can go ahead and
just time consuming.
And say you have to just do drafts and make sure you do all the picks the exact same way, and then you basically have to have a best ball team where they just load up the auto starting.
It's just time consuming, but you technically can.
Yeah,
but
something like that for the future. See the accuracy of all this, and
at the end of the day, the accuracy of this is a June draft. Things are going to change between now and August.
Yeah, and redraft leagues are not. You don't win it off your draft because you have to keep trading. You have to keep working off the waiver wire. So for a best ball style, it works. You can do it this way because any guy who's juicy off the waiver wire that nobody drafted, if John Ross becomes the next big hot thing and drops, is the number 1 wide receiver. No one saw that coming, so no one's gonna, software's not going to go pick him up and put him on the team for you.
The ghost of John Ross.
All right, let's beer check it.
I definitely did not win.
I definitely did not win.
Oh well, this is my third beer in the glass, so I've got two down.
Yeah, I'm starting to.
So I guess I'll take the rant today, and with ranked play coming back to Valorant next week, I just want to take a second to bitch at Riot because what the hell were you thinking with Reyna? I mean, come on. Why does an agent need 2 low-cost blinds, a short-range teleport or a heal, and like pseudo invulnerability with her ultimate? Like, what's the point of having other agents on your squad? Riot, you were off to a great start, and everyone was like, all right, let's tone it back a little bit when you put in Raze. Like, we don't want these hyper duelists. We want it to be a team game. You're like, gotcha. I feel you 100%. Here's a person who can beat a team 1v5 with no guns. Like, it's so infuriating to me because I want to love Valorant. Valorant's a crisp, clean shooter, and it's fun. And then they put Reyna in, and it makes me want to spoon my eyeballs out and feed them to myself. It's so infuriating. Like, please, just nerf her, like, just down to an acceptable level. Like, the idea behind the champion isn't bad. I just need it to be less overtuned. Like, nerf her down to make her like a Jet or a Raze or someone else, and it's fine. Maybe only give her 1 blind, or make her blind cost like 400. I don't know. That's all I got. That's been weighing on me. It you know, the think tank behind these agents seems to be broken. They should try unplugging it and putting it in rice. All right. Well,
Yep.
Let's call it there. We're gonna wrap it up for a week. No episode next week as we are all going to be out of town enjoying the warm, sandy locale of Vegas. So, obviously, we're not shooting from Vegas, so there's no episode next week. We're planning on coming back to you all with a special 4th of July episode. And then, after the first week of July, we're going to be doing 2 episodes a week, so tune in for double the content.
Woo!
All right, see you guys next week, or 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.